Ed, has the HJ ever told you where to stick that pull station?
Welcome, everyone, to the Temporal 3 podcast, where we talk about fire alarm. I am privileged to be joined today by my co host, Mr. Ed Heyden. Welcome, Ed.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
And Mr. Charles Aulner. Welcome, Charles.
Hello.
Well, guys, today I want to start up talking about something relatively new with NICET, and that is PDFs being provided in the exam. Ed, what's your opinion of NICET providing PDFs in the exams, at least in the fire alarm and the sprinkler exams?
It's kind of unusual for me, to be honest with you, because I've studied so hard inside the actual code that getting a PDF to me, it's a great backup, but I think it's a time waster also.
Absolutely. Charles, what's your thoughts on this?
I absolutely love that NICET is putting the PDFs of the code,
Charles loves it. And why do you love it, Charles?
no matter what the source. So having this available on the exam when you're taking the test gives test takers an opportunity to use another tool. For me personally, I prefer a book. The PDF, I use those as a desk reference when I have lots of time and I'm not under the constraint of a time clock. On the NICET test, I'd prefer to have a book, but a lot of folks in our industry don't have the codes. Having it available on screen is absolutely fantastic.
I
One
see
thing
it
that
as a great backup to the printed book, but not a replacement for the printed book. And that's the thing
I
that
agree.
I am old school, that being able to navigate codes, being able to flip through a book, and one of the challenges that I see with PDFs is doing a keyword search, and you have to be very, very narrow and specific in your keyword search. I'll give you an example: smoke detector. If I search smoke detector in the PDF of 72, I get over 300 results. And given a minute and a half per question on the NICET exam on average, can I go through those 300 results to find my answer? Probably not. So I think, as with any tool, it is useful, but you have to know how to use it.
And
Otherwise, it
when
can
to use
become
it,
dangerous.
and when to use it also.
Yep, absolutely. Well, the next thing I'd like to talk about is a code question that came up from a student about the IBC and about the elimination of pull stations when smoke detectors or sprinklers are present. And is that a general permission, or does it have to be specifically required? And my understanding of the IBC is that anything in the IBC, that it has to be stated as a requirement. That there's exceptions, yes, and you always want to read the exceptions in the IBC, but you don't want to just say, okay, I've got a sprinkler system in this building, or I put a couple smoke detectors in this building, I don't need pull stations throughout. You really need to read through the IBC to understand what the exceptions are.
I think that becomes kind of confusing in some respect, though, myself. Okay, so we talked about an automatic system have to have at least one manual means to
Yes.
initiate the alarm. Why would they take something like that away? Why would there be such a discrepancy, whether it could be in the code or not in the code, or allowed or not allowed?
Right. And we're talking about pull stations plural. So we're allowing eliminations if you ever require for a manual fire alarm system in a building. For example, if you have a group A, a B, or an M, you can eliminate the pull stations throughout if the building is sprinklered. But you're right that one pull station is still required. And we need one pull station in a group A, B, or M where there's a sprinkler system throughout. And we need one pull. Where does it go? Where do we put that pull station?
Well, in reality, it needs to go wherever the AHJ wants that pull station to go. Ed, has the AHJ ever told you where to stick that pull station?
In not so many words, yes. And I found it very difficult to comply with that particular request.
You found it physically impossible.
I did, and consequently, I then turned it over to one of my other guys to take care of that job for me.
You subbed it out.
I subbed that out. Right. Yeah, it just did something about it just didn't stick very well with me, you know?
Well,
But to answer your question, though, Charles, he has told me where they would like that particular manual device to be located, and normally it's in a constantly attended location, and you'll find them a lot where there is no guidance at the actual sprinkler riser.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the interesting ones, looking at the IBC, Group E, you can eliminate the pull stations throughout with smokes or heats, but they have to be in specific locations, or the building has to be sprinkled throughout. For Group I, there is no specific exception for elimination. And Group R, this is one that really throws people because the sprinkler system exception is there, but it's only for the manual pull stations. Does not affect the smoke alarms. Why does it not impact the smoke alarm? What's the difference between a smoke alarm and a smoke detector?
There's a big difference. One is device that will give you an alarm that's based upon a spot type detector. That's a non-system detector, which would be the smoke alarm, or as I like to call it, my dinner bell. Well, as my come on, guys, that was a joke. I'm trying.
Got
I'm
it.
trying. I'm trying to move on with this one. And the other type, the smoke detector, is actually a system detector, a detector that would be involved in, let's say, a complete system with a fire alarm panel, so to speak, or if you're using a combination system, a security and fire alarm system. Yes.
So in a residential or a group R, is the smoke alarm intended to evacuate the building?
Smoke alarm is going to notify you in that particular occupancy that it's in that you have an event taking place that involves smoke. It's not going to signal any other apartment in that group R.
So that might be an influencing factor in your question, Brian, don't you think?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, great. Well, next thing I'd like to talk about, guys, is a question from the field. Student asked, what are the testing requirements for those dreaded duct detectors? I know that duct detectors are a personal favorite of a lot of fire alarm people. Ed, how do you feel about duct detectors?
They're not my personal favorite, that is for sure. First of all, trying to find them is something completely. If you do not have a set of documents, I want to say the as-built plans for the system, you have to go and search for the indicator where it may be on the ceiling. You may have to search for a reset switch where it may be, or you can look to see where a lot of places that I've seen installers put them. They put them directly on the furnace themselves, which is the absolutely wrong place to put it, because the code is very specific about where those duct detectors should be. You know, duct width and the amount 6 times the amount of duct width from the nearest bend to turn, so on and so forth. So you can start with that. They're not my favorite. Am I trying to make that point to you, Brian?
Yeah, I think many people would agree with you on that. And, this is one of those code crossover things that causes us a lot of frustration because they're required by the mechanical code, not required by the fire alarm code. But the fire alarm code does require the interconnection. And if they're connected to the fire alarm, it usually falls to us to inspect and test them. So even if, like, as you mentioned, Ed, even if they were installed improperly, we still got to inspect them and test them. And since they're connected to the fire alarm, they basically become our responsibility. So one of the requirements for testing duct detectors is basically testing them the same way we test spot type smoke detectors. So what do we do with spot type smoke detectors? What are the two tests we do on spot type smokes, guys?
Functional is one, and sensitivity is the other.
Yep. So on duct detectors, we need to functionally test them. How do we functionally test a smoke detector, a spot type smoke? Can we use a magnet?
Normally, no. We induce smoke into the chamber, although there are some manufacturers that allow magnet testing of their devices, but normally no.
Yep. Absolutely right. You got to do something that proves smoke will enter to the chamber and trigger the detector. And you're right, there are some detectors that have magnet-based functions unless it's specifically listed for that. And that's one common thing that we see. Well, this, duct detector's hard to get to, or whatever. I'm just going to wave a magnet in front of it. That's not a smoke entry test. The other one is sensitivity. And just like spot type smokes, sensitivity testing. But with sensitivity testing, depending on the age of the device and who's responsible for it, what they put in, we can use the panel if it's an addressable system, or the detector if it has detector monitoring, or worst case, we're going to use a calibrated smoke generator like the SDI product.
Very, very, very true. And there's some specifics based upon the code requirement of when that sensitivity testing should be also in chapter 14.
Absolutely. The other thing that's required with duct detectors is something called a differential pressure test, where we're using a manometer or a magnehelic gauge to measure the difference between the intake tube and the exhaust tube. We actually have to show that airflow, that there's suction from the intake and going through to the exhaust, so smoke will actually be pulled across the detector. And that's one that's often not considered or possibly not done, but it is a requirement of 72. And there is a measurement, inches of water typically, which is a measurement of suction. And it has to have a certain amount of suction, typically between zero point 0.1 inches to 1.1 inches is common. But again, that's per manufacturer's instructions as to what that number needs to be. But it is a test that we do have to perform.
Brian,
You
I
know, mm,
have some familiarity with the manometer. What's that other thing you're talking about? What was that word?
Magnehelic gauge. Magnehelic gauge, we're all familiar, you're familiar with manometers. I know manometer is a digital device. Magnehelic gauge is an analog version of a manometer. So a magnehelic gauge is a non-battery powered, old school analog differential pressure gauge. And I actually investigated this a little bit further about why you would use one or the other. I figured that manometer would be better because it's digital, it's going to be more accurate and stuff. But actually, in the HVAC industry, they use magnehelics in applications where they're dealing with really cold air because manometers can freeze. So
Well,
I found that very interesting.
Ed, can you say that word?
uh, I'm from Brooklyn, New York. We don't use that language. I can't twist my tongue in that direction. But I will. I like to touch exactly about what Brian just said here a minute ago. It's in the code to be done, and how many of us actually do it, right? Okay, so think about this. Are we responsible for our actions or inactions on fire alarm system testing?
Absolutely, we
Yes,
are.
yes, indeed.
Do we may have to answer one day for what we did or what we did not do? Maybe.
Absolutely.
So,
Hopefully not. Hopefully not answer it to a judge.
well, this is the point that I'm trying to make. There's a liability based upon what we do. Is testing via these particular pieces of equipment that I cannot mention, uh, the manometer and the other thing that's talking about.
Magnehelic gauge.
Thank you very much. Any less important than testing a smoke detector if it's written in the code? No,
No,
it's not.
absolutely not.
And I would have fully agree with you. I don't see a lot of people doing this. How many? I want the folks that are actually watching this podcast. How many of us are doing it?
Yeah,
And are
exactly.
you ever going to be asked one day, why didn't you do it? Are you NICET certified?
Well,
Yep.
Should you know better?
Ed,
Yep.
my experience is I got thrown out in the field to do a whole bunch of different jobs and work, and only later did I really learn what code requirements were.
Sounds like a
And
management problem.
yeah, and as you look back on your career, it's like, oh man,
Yeah,
I messed up some stuff back in the day.
Sounds like
absolutely.
sounds like OJT to me.
Well,
The way many fire alarm companies operate, go out there in the field, you'll figure it out.
yeah, I
Trial
think
by
there's a
fire.
difference between trial by fire and OJT.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not quite sure what that acronym means.
Oh, on the job training.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
sorry.
no worries.
So one of
Well,
the other things The
Okay.
72 requires on duct detectors is a visual inspection of the sampling tube to confirm proper orientation. Have you guys ever seen a sampling tube that was installed in an improper orientation, or more accurately, probably a duct detector that was mounted in improper orientation, i.e., across airflow?
Yes. Yes. On both of those.
And the way we visually confirm this on newer units, the sampling tube is usually keyed. It'll have an indicator stamped on it, or it'll only go in one way, assuming the detector was installed properly. So it's easy to visually verify. But on some units or older units, how would you confirm which way the holes are facing? And I actually got this from one of our fellow instructors, Colin DeZuber, suggested this. That a great way to do it: take a piece of cable. We all got fire alarm cable. Take a piece of cable, put a bend in it, stick it in the tube, see which way the holes are facing, see if they're facing the right way or not. Great way to visually verify that it's oriented properly.
You could actually look in that tube also with a
Right.
flashlight,
Yep.
and that way you could actually see whether the holes are facing towards the airflow or away from the airflow.
Absolutely. Assuming it's not full of dust.
Well, you have to blow it out also. I mean, you carry a can of compressed air with you wherever if you're doing testing, and make sure you clean that out to begin with. Now, I've
Absolutely.
also seen folks back in the day, if we're talking about things that have happened, not currently, take actually smoke bombs and throw smoke bombs inside of the plenum itself, and produce smoke that way. It's not good. It stinks,
Mm-mm.
number one, and it's really the odor and the amount of gas that this smoke bomb produces. Uh, I'm surprised that their detector that's actually mounted in the housing of the duct detector unit would not be corroded and fouled after that stuff going through it. So obviously not the correct way to testing. NFPA 72 is very specific on how they're tested.
Yeah, and I would argue that it certainly could be judged as a smoke entry test, but probably wouldn't be the most convenient and expeditious way to perform it for sure. I agree. Break out the can smoke, give
That's
it a
right.
sprit. Don't empty the can. Half-second sprit, 12 inches away, and test it that way. But I'm sure there are AHJs or other individuals out there that use a smoke bomb method. But you're right, that would be definitely a concern.
Now, a lot of people wonder how am I going to get the smoke into a concealed unit like that? I mean,
Right.
it's got a plastic cover on it. From where's the smoke go? Well, you have to take the cover off the duct detector and spray it as you would an open air detector at that point into the chamber, and follow of course the manufacturer's instructions on the required amount of smoke to put in.
And that's where the differential pressure test comes in because, yeah, you take the cover off, you spray smoke at it, great, you're proving smoke will enter the detector. But with the differential air pressure test, you're actually proving there's airflow across the detector.
Well, I mean, Brian, I've seen that a lot of folks, and also Chuck, you may have seen this too. Doesn't the reset switch provide that test for us also? That was a question that was asked to me in one of my classes. And of course, what do you refer back to when someone asks you that particular question?
The code.
Charles, the
Oh,
code.
yep,
Absolutely. So what's the key reset switch do? Isn't that part of the system?
it is, but it's a convenience factor.
And
So
it's not a
for the
testing.
AHJ.
It's not
Yep,
a functional test.
exactly.
Functional test would be the smoke entry.
Yep. Usually the test switch is usually an electromagnet that is located near the detector, and when you put it, it basically powers it up, activates the magnet test on the detector. But as you said, Ed, it's not a functional test, not a smoke entry net test. It is only a magnet test, which would not meet the intent of the code.
True.
Excellent. Well, guys, thank you again for your time today and participation in this discussion. That concludes this podcast of Temporal 3. Thank you again, Charles, for your time. Edward, thank you for your time.
Thanks,
Thank
Brian.
you.